For 45 years, the Ulster Project of Greater Milwaukee has created new opportunities for peace and reconciliation between Northern Irish Catholic and Protestant young people. The teens spend part of the summer here in Milwaukee in an environment that fosters tolerance and understanding, different from their country that just a generation ago knew only violence and deep distrust. Let's learn more about the Ulster Project Milwaukee and the work it does with the Very Reverend Kevin Carroll, Dean of the Episcopal All Saints Cathedral and Chair of the Ulster Project Milwaukee Board. Kevin, thanks so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you for having us on today.
What is the Ulster Project and how has worked here helped to create a more peaceful Northern Ireland?
Well, the Ulster Project originally began in 1975 when a minister from the Church of Ireland did a pulpit swap with an Episcopal priest in Connecticut. And the Reverend Kerry Waterstone was really taken by how his experience in the United States showed how it's possible for people of different religions to get along and to coexist with each other in a way that didn't lead to the violence that they were starting to really experience in Northern Ireland. And he felt that if he could get some of the kids from Northern Ireland to come over and experience the same thing in the United States, that maybe they would see that there was an alternative to violence when it came to dealing with sectarian issues in their country. And so for the last almost 50 years, 45 years in Milwaukee and 50 years overall, every summer Northern Irish kids have come to different cities in Milwaukee in the United States and stayed with host families for a month and experienced. They've learned. They've made friends with people they would not have had the opportunity to make friends with, because even to this day, Northern Ireland is still pretty segregated between Protestant and Catholic communities. There's not the violence that's torn up that country, but it's still pretty separated. So we're really proud that we have a chapter here in Milwaukee that's been going strong almost since the get-go.
How do you work to create that environment that is really stress-free, kind of probably a judgment-free zone too, where young people are really able just to get to know each other as other young people?
When the kids come over from Northern Ireland, they are paired up with a host family here in Milwaukee with teens of the same age, and we try for the same religion. We try to put Catholic youth in Catholic families and Protestant youth in Protestant families, not all the time. And then they spend the month doing all kinds of activities, some recreational, some social. They're required to worship. The whole project goes to different churches together on Sundays. So a lot of Protestant kids have never been in a Catholic church, and a lot of Catholic kids have never been in a Protestant church. And then at the heart of the project is what we call discovery. And these are day-long, highly facilitated conversations about things like reconciliation, peacemaking, sectarianism, really topical issues. And hopefully they've learned to trust each other to the point where they can start having these open and honest conversations and take that experience back home with them.
What kind of difference do you think the Ulster Project has made to the way Northern Ireland is today? That violence that was so prevalent in Northern Ireland just a generation ago really does not exist now.
Well, since the inception of the project, over 30,000 kids have been through the Ulster Project. And not one of them has ever been arrested in Northern Ireland for participating in any act of violence. It's had a significant impact there. And now some of the original participants in the project have come into leadership positions. The Lord Mayor of Belfast was an Ulster Project student in Milwaukee in his youth. There's right now one of the members in the British Parliament representing Belfast was an Ulster Project participant in Milwaukee. So these people who experienced this as a young adult started processing it and now are in leadership positions. And in 1999, the Protestant and Catholic communities signed off on the Good Friday Agreement, and that ended the sectarian violence in Northern Ireland, and it's still holding. It's fragile, but it's still holding. And the Ulster Project was credited as one piece of the puzzle that actually made it possible. So it's played a big role. Northern Ireland is not that big. Belfast is only the size of Milwaukee. So in fact, a little smaller. So when you start thinking about tens of thousands of young people having gone through this process, that starts to make an impact in the city and then in their country.
You mentioned the host families being so important. We're going to be joined now by someone who was part of the host family last year, Anna Sauer. Anna is a junior at Divine Savior Holy Angels. Thanks so much for being with us.
Of course. I'm happy to be here.
What was your experience like being a host family?
So it's the first time I've ever hosted someone internationally. So that was definitely a big step for me. Being able to have a international friend is an incredible opportunity that I never thought I'd be able to have. But my dad also did it back in the 80s. So it was a good way to follow in his steps as well. But it helped with like having her live in my house. We got to have quality time when we weren't with the whole group. We would watch movies, we'd have dinner together with my family, and that just helps with the connection that we then go to the group and learn about, as he said, through discovery, the world problems that we're taught to be self-advocates for the next generation to like lead into that, to be able to have open discussions about that. So it definitely helps to have them in your house, to have that quality time with them. To build that bond, yeah.
What was the one thing that you learned from this experience?
For me, it was definitely the value of friendships and how that can like alter the way I view the world, and like the friendships that I created with my teen Aideen, and seeing her views. Even when we weren't with the group, we were still able to talk about the discussions that we had in Discovery and even out of Discovery. So it was that value of friendship to be able to have that international connection and to learn about her perspectives from her from her area compared to mine, to be able to compare that. That was definitely one of the most important aspects of the project that I learned.
And Kevin, what do you think American teens, American families, people in the community who may become familiar with the Ulster Project, what can we learn from the Ulster Project?
I think the way our society is right now, we're divided along so many different lines. And I think right now, maybe our young people need the Ulster Project even more than the Northern Irish teens do. They've learned skills to help overcome the differences that divide them. And I think from our perspective as a project, the way you start making an impact in the world is one relationship at a time. When you start seeing other people not as your enemy, but as another person who just simply wants to lead a peaceful and good life. And when you can start seeing people with whom you disagree in that light instead of as your enemy, it starts making an impact on the wider society. So I think part of what we look at in the Ulster Project, issues of racism, issues of justice, are just as relevant here in the United States, if not even more so in some ways.
Well, Kevin and Anna, thank you both so much for being with us. You can support the Ulster Project Milwaukee by attending the Discover Your Irish fundraiser. It's March 1st from 5 to 10 p.m. at Mount Mary University. You can learn more also about the Ulster Project at ulsterprojectmilwaukee.org. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.